Ben, we're back with the No One Fights Alone podcast. How you doing up there in Utah, man?
I'm good, man. Thanks for asking. It's a Friday.
It is Friday here as well. It is, I'm fixing to go spend some time with the family. We do have a funeral, but it's going to be a joyous occasion for us. But man, I'm pretty excited about our podcast we're bringing today.
Yeah, no, he's a good egg. Known James for almost 10 years now, and fascinated every time I get to hang out with him. Just the way he treats his family, the way he talks about stuff. He's got a cool story, and I'm excited to hear more about it.
I definitely think the listeners will be blown away at when he starts unpacking his story. But the great part, and I'll tee up for you a little bit. I want to hear your thoughts on the latter portion of the conversation. The real meat and potatoes for, I think, our listeners is going to be the back third of this conversation. Is that fair?
Yeah. No, super great. No, he's got a gift at kind of articulating a lot of little details that a lot of us just miss. Yeah. No, I'm stoked that he's able to give a perspective about marriage, and a lot of it's about being in this community and some of the blind spots we have sometimes. And obviously we're better off once we can see our blind spots.
Or our own, we'll claim him as our own, because he was a Chateau guy for a while.
He was.
But James Montgomery, Lotus Counseling Service out of Utah, veteran, strong military background, now a practicing counselor, is going to, and I want all of our listeners to really kind of lean into the part of parenting and marriage. Like, the insight he brings is absolutely incredible, and it was just a fun conversation. Well, let's dive in it. For the listeners, stay tuned for James Montgomery, and we'll see you soon.
Great.
Welcome to the No One Fights Alone podcast. This podcast is dedicated to mental wellness for first responders and beyond. Through powerful stories, personal experiences, and expert insights, we explore the challenges and triumphs of maintaining resilience in the face of adversity. Together, we remind you, no one fights alone.
Hey, welcome back to the No One Fights Alone podcast. We have James Montgomery with us today. Ben, I am super excited about having James on. How about you?
I have a huge man crush on James. He's there's a lot going on with James. I'm excited to know him and his story a little bit.
James, welcome to the podcast, man.
I appreciate it. I sit there and listen to your episodes, and I'm like, wow, like, this is the big leagues. I really made it.
So you're the one. I mean, actually,
I'm the one listener.
One time we had two, but we're back down to one. So we owe you a debt of gratitude, man. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, I'm glad to keep you in business.
Yeah, for sure. Well, for the listeners, James is a licensed clinical mental health counselor. He is the founder and clinical director of Lotus Counseling Services of Utah. And James is also a retired master sergeant with over 24 years of service in the U.S. Army. And James says he is passionate about dismantling stigma around mental health, building stronger communities, and help others see that hope and healing are always possible. Man, thanks for that, James. What a short but powerful resume right there, man. Military service, doing some good work in there, breaking some stigma down. Tell us a little bit about, before we kind of get into your story, tell us a little bit about your counseling service, Lotus Counseling.
Yeah, so Lotus Counseling Services, I initially opened it just to serve the first responder, frontline worker, veteran service member population. And that was my focus. That was my business plan. I was going to help this population. And about 3 months into it, I realized that if you really want to help this population, we have to help the families. So this is the spouse. This is the kids. It's a full spectrum healing. It's not just about the servant, if you will, the first responder or veteran. It's about helping heal all of the wounds in that family unit. And so it started from an 18 plus counseling service and just me. I've got 7 therapists on board. We see kids as young as 4 all the way up With, as old as people are willing to do therapy, we see families, we see couples, and the goal is to heal the unit, not just the individual.
Wow, that's powerful. And I think that's, that's something that we struggle sometimes finding those who really can speak to that on the podcast. Sometimes there are a lot of folks come on here and we just continue to be blessed with people coming on and telling fantastic stories of healing and health. And it's a little more elusive of finding those who will really talk about the family. So I know Ben's excited about this today. We've been talking about this a little bit. I'm excited about this, but man, if we back up in time here a little bit, just tell us a little bit about who you are, man.
Well, I'm a good old boy from Southern Utah. Graduated from a Hurricane High School, which is probably 100 people in my class, if that. I was the youngest of my family, and I didn't grow up in a great situation. I grew up in an abusive, alcoholic home, where there was a lot of yelling and screaming, and my normal wasn't normal to other kids. So I really struggled with finding my people, or, kind of holding on to that. And when you grow up with addiction, you grow up with a lot of attachment stuff. And it's definitely been a part of me throughout my life and things that I've had to work through. And I joined the military at 17 years old. I wanted to get away. I wanted to serve my country and have a purpose, and what better way than to join the military? So instead of a summer vacation between my junior and my senior year of high school, I went to boot camp. 4'10", 87 pounds. I was an immediate target for every drill sergeant imaginable, man. I was a magnet. I could not hide, even with my size. They looked for me, and that's actually served me well throughout my life. Of, you can't fly under the radar. You gotta step forward, and you gotta do good things. And if people are watching you gotta be doing the very best that you can all the time. I came back after my boot camp experience, and I finished my senior year of high school. After that, I went back and I was in the artillery, so I did all of my artillery training, and did the National Guard thing 1 week in a month for a few years, and married, divorced, deployment, married again. Here I am. I'm, after just shy of 25 years, I retired in 2022. My last deployment in 2019, I came back, and I knew I wasn't the same, and it was a different, not the same than my other deployment was, and felt like my soul was broken. I felt like there was a part of me that was gone forever, and my family noticed it. And so I just kind of switched gears and really focused on my master's degree and becoming a mental health counselor and identifying what that new me was. I still want to serve. I couldn't do it in that capacity anymore.
I was going to say something. If you could take a second, James, give us, we're gonna hear more about kind of the more recent pieces of your journey, but give us a little snapshot of what was it like to watch James early in his career, early in the military. What was important to him? What was he trying to prove? Who is he about?
Yeah, always trying to prove people wrong. Early in the military, I had a lot of doubters. I was this really small, skinny kid from Hurricane, Utah with a big mouth, and I had to prove a lot of people that I was worth the effort. I had leaders that didn't want to see me succeed, and they were very verbal about that they didn't want to see me succeed. And I let my ego get in the way a lot. And so I would run my mouth, and I wouldn't set up a great light for myself, if you will. And finally had, this leader that was just you're capable of great things. Just shut your mouth and do it. And I feel like after having him in my life and being honest, both showing some of my faults as well as some of my opportunities for growth, I felt like I really dug in, and I promoted quick early on in the military. I took on leadership positions early, and throughout my career, what I've learned and what I learned early in the military is and I see this again working with first responders and frontline workers, is it's not about the soldier, it's about the human being, right? So when I'm working with these soldiers, and this is throughout my whole career, when I'm working with these service members and they're in trouble, right? Maybe they got a DUI, maybe they were late for first formation, maybe they got caught lying. If we look past the fact that they're a service member and we look at the human aspect of it and we address the human aspect of it, we have amazing service members, right? And I learned that so young. If we have time, I got a quick story of where that started. I had a brand new private, and brand new. I was like a brand new leader in the military. You know, this is my section. These are my 12 guys, and we're going to be the best. And I have this guy that's been in the military like 2 months, and he's 2 hours late for first formation. I rip into him. I do the military thing. He's doing push-ups. He's getting screamed at. He's carrying rocks in his pockets all day. Like, he's doing all the things that I had witnessed, right? But I never asked him why he was late. I just, hammer fist the way it was. The second day, it was a Sunday, he comes in, he's an hour late. And same thing again, man. I am just on this guy. Same kind of thing, shame, all of that kind of stuff. The next month, I called him. I'm like, hey, what time do you have to be here? And he's like 6 o'clock because first formation's at 7. And so I'll leave my house at 4. And I said, why do you need to leave your house at 4? He goes, Sergeant, I don't have a car. And I'm walking from Santa Clara. So Santa Clara to Industrial Park in St. George, ego check, right? I failed as a leader on my first day as being a leader, right? I said, why didn't you say so? And he said, you never asked. And I didn't want to be disrespectful when you were correcting me. Whew. Right? From that moment on, someone's late. It's not why you were late. It's, hey, are you okay? Is there something going on that we can help support you with? And I was at that kid's house, right, at 6 o'clock to get him. We went and got breakfast. Then we went and made it on time. And I checked in on him and made sure he had a sponsor, someone to make sure he was successful instead of somebody to put rocks in his pockets. And that is where my mindset of human first, soldier second came from. I found it valuable throughout my whole career.
How many years had you been in the military at this point?
When I met that young man,
Yeah.
5.
What a powerful lesson, right?
Huge. I was so grateful that I learned it within that first decade, and not on the way out.
Sure. We recently had reminds me of Chad Balistrazi, and that we just, because he had 2 stories that he offered that were very similar to this, of this military, is definitely different framework than law enforcement. There are some crossovers, but there's some uniqueness here too, to obviously the leadership of it. But man, what a powerful growth moment for you as a human, as a man, as a leader. Were you married then? Did you say you had children? I don't remember what you said now.
So yeah, at that point I was newly married to my practice marriage, my first wife. And I was probably at that point, I probably had a newborn too.
For sure.
I had a quick follow up on that, James, because I think there's moments where we're under the impression that how I show up as an adult has very little to do with what it was like being me as a kid. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, what's it like for a kid who's getting his ass kicked growing up, and punishment and shame, that's just how it's done, reinforced in the military. Possibly, arguably, you might even be better at navigating the military because of your grown up years. What's it like for that kid to have to course correct and find something different, like humanizing somebody, when that goes against the grain of a lot of other lessons that you had learned and probably had some level of risk to it?
The innate amount of insecurity that it brought on, like just questioning everything. If I can't yell and scream because it doesn't work, then I must not be a good leader, because that's what it was growing up. That's what it's like in the military. And I was great. Like, as soon as like the drill sergeants or NCOs, when I came to my unit, would start yelling, I was great. I can do everything and predict every movement, because I grew up in addiction, and you learn how to predict the movement, the needs, and the wants of those around you to keep homeostasis within the family unit. Now my family wears uniforms. I was great with it until I became that leader. And I'm like, wow, people don't like to be yelled at all the time and like made to feel like crap all the time. It was a lot. Like, that mentality that I had growing up, it ruined my first marriage. Like, I'll own it. Like, that constant on edge emotional dysregulation that I experienced growing up and I experienced in the military, it ruined my first marriage. So learning something new was so scary. But once I saw the benefits of my section, these 12 guys, once I started seeing their performance increase above and beyond what the other similar sections were doing, I'm like, wait a minute, this like works. Like, if I tell my guys they're amazing and they're doing great, and I let this guy leave a little bit early for his kid's first birthday party, he comes back tomorrow early and we get more done. Like, there's something to this. And I found that applicable on my military deployments. We took over an artillery mission, and I tried to have that mentality with my guys, and we excelled. We far exceeded the expectations that were set for us. And I'm biased, but we did far better than our counterparts. We were shooting quicker, we were more accurate, we were having less issues personnel wise, and the troops on the forward front, they were calling us above other units because of our reaction time, and all of that was like culture. That was just human first, recognizing the needs of the soldier so that we could take care of everybody else.
Did you have a mentor in that attitude? Did you have somebody that you were mirroring or observing, like a leader that stood out? Like, most people don't have these epiphanies and say, I'm going to start humanizing people today. They've had some catalyst for that.
Yeah, I had two that I can think of. He's a retired master sergeant now. His name's Chris Branch, and the other is a retired first sergeant named Terry Wild. These guys were as like Southern boys as you can get, who absolutely treated everybody with respect. They didn't care who you were. When they were in leadership positions, they talked to you like you were a human. When people were going above and beyond kind of the military not hazing kind of thing, they would be like, hey, knock it off. What are you doing? And they would put me in my place. Like, they were, throughout my hardest years of like when I maybe didn't want to live anymore, they were there in the shadows like, hey, let's do a gut check here. Like, what's going on? And, even today, I'll still reach out to Chris and be like, hey, can I get this gut check?
Yeah, for sure.
So when you say they kind of kept you in check, you're talking about the positive side of that.
100%
wasn't,
positive,
they weren't
right?
They weren't there to chop you off at your knees and humiliate you publicly. I think some folks think that's, knocking heads is part of where the results come from. But you're saying these are folks who are, tell me what that kind of confrontation looks like.
Yeah, that's them pulling me away from everybody else and saying, hey, you said this or you did this, why? Or like in one instance, we were in the middle of a fire mission. Somebody came in, it's the middle of Iraq, right? And I screamed, said, get the fuck out of here. And it was my first sergeant. And afterwards, the first sergeant was like livid. How dare you? And Chris was like, was he in the middle of a fire mission? Well, yeah, I'll take care of it. And Chris pulled me out. He's like, did he try to interrupt you in the middle of a fire mission? I said, yeah. And he goes, I got it. He's like, but make sure you don't tell the first sergeant to fuck off in front of your guys. He has an ego. I'm like, I got it. Thanks. And it was like that rather than the same first sergeant that was mad at me. That same, probably within days, locked me up, position of attention in front of all my guys and berated me on what a shitty human being and NCO I was because I was wearing flip-flops, right? I was wearing sandals on my time off, coming back from the shower, which was allowed, but he didn't like it. And so he embarrassed the heck out of me. And afterwards, my guys were like, what the heck? And I learned from guys like that, don't do stuff like that. And so I really enjoyed these two mentors and leaders because they weren't public humiliators. There were times I messed up and they'd pull me aside and say, hey, this happened. Like, let's talk about it, or this can't happen again. Got it. Like, let's come up with a plan to fix it instead of like this knife hand assault in front of all of your guys.
Well, let's keep going. Let's keep progressing here a little bit with your kind of the backstory of who you are. So we're doing some deployments, and how's things going in James's world at this point?
Oh, I got to tell you what, after my leading up to my very first deployment, and my first deployment it's like one of those things that a lot of my people in my unit don't even like to talk about. So I'll talk about it. So, Southern Utah Golden Boys, it's, we got this historic unit going back to the pioneer days, It's early 2003, things in Iraq are kicking off, and we have got our orders. We are going to Iraq. We get a send-off from the town, the highway patrol followed us all the way up the freeway, and it was like this, whoa, we're going to go do this thing. But weeks before that happened, my brother died of a drug overdose. And so I was not in a good headspace. My first marriage was not great. And so I'm headed out. I'm going to go do this thing. I'm going to go to Iraq. The world is going to get fixed. My world's going to get fixed because I'm going to go serve. And we go to Fort Carson, Colorado for our train up. You usually go somewhere to get validated. And while I was there, I get a Red Cross message that my grandpa died. And I was like, dang, grandpa had cancer. It wasn't a surprise, but it was my grandpa, and I didn't go home for the funeral because I didn't want to disappoint my leader. And a couple of days later, I get another Red Cross message. My dad had almost died. They revived him. He was in emergency surgery. He's in the ICU. They don't know his status. My world is rocked, right? Mission first. We're going to go to Iraq. This is going to be a thing. And a couple of days later, one of my guys, I am his first line leader. He's also my next door neighbor, says, "Hey, Sergeant Montgomery, I don't want to get in your business, but you need to hire a private investigator." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Your wife has so many guys over at the house, and there is no good stuff happening there." I'm like, "No," I confront her. "Hey, guess who's been having an affair for a year?" Everything you think about with like that kind of stuff, it happened. And so my motivation, my heart, nothing's there, but it's mission first. I'm doing what I can emotionally to get through this. And I get formally counseled for lack of motivation by my first line leader. And so at that point, I'm like, let's just gut this all down, So we continue the training. I'm just waking up, just trying to get through each day. And we get to a point where, like in the next few days, we're going to Iraq, and it gets real quiet. We're at the motor pool where they keep all the vehicles. There are no leaders around all day. And when something like that happens, something's going on. And like 3 p.m, they all come back to the motor pool. They have this huge formation. And they said, "Hey, we just want to let you know, we're not actually going to Iraq. We're going to go train ROTC cadets at Fort Lewis, Washington." They never told us. We left as heroes, right? And now we're going to go teach college students. So we went to Fort Lewis, Washington, and it didn't get any better. I hadn't mourned the loss of my brother, hadn't mourned the loss of my grandpa. My dad was still in the hospital. My divorce papers were in the process of being finalized. I was like, this is it. I can't do this, but I don't want my parents to have another suicide death of a son. Because in 99, we had buried my oldest brother who had been murdered. In 2003, buried my older brother who had the drug overdose, and I'm it. But I couldn't do it anymore. And so I made a plan. I was going to kill myself in the most poetic way possible, and nobody would know. I rented a boat. I bought fishing gear. I bought fishing licenses, and I went and bought a gun. Because one thing I learned is if I'm going to kill myself, I'm never going to do it with a gun I have an emotional attachment to, because somebody might want that one day.
Yep.
Right. So I get it all packed up. I'm ready to go. All I have to do is drive an hour north, and the goal is I'm going to go fishing. I'm going to slip into the water. I'm going to shoot myself in the head. Body's never found. Guns never found. He died fishing. He died doing exactly what he loves. It was a drowning, rest in peace, brother. You died doing what you want. And that was the plan. And I had my bag, like this is real. I had my bag, and I stood up off my bed, and there was a knock on my door. I opened the door, and it was this private. I knew him, but like we weren't hanging out or nothing. He's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm just going to go kill myself. What's up, man?" And he goes, "I thought maybe you can get a tattoo. Do you want to do that instead of kill yourself?" And I was like, "Sure." So I put my bag down, and I went and got a tattoo, and I came back, and I was like, "Man, that hurt so much." And I feel better, And it disabled that plan. And by disabling that plan, later that night, I was walking around in the darkness. I wasn't sleeping, and I heard a voice, and he said, "What's up, Midnight?" And, there's a country song, Midnight in Montgomery. And that first sergeant, the one I told you was a mentor, he was in the shadows smoking a cigarette, and he's like, "What's up, Midnight?" And I'm like, "I'm just contemplating what my purpose is." And we had this talk, and it wasn't like super deep, but he cared. And that was the first time that I had felt care and compassion in 6 months. And from there, it was just like, life is so hard, and I have lost everything, but that's okay. Like, I'll figure it out. And we came home 6 months later. So I left in January, came home in September. My dad knew everything that was going on. So when he was well enough, he went and broke into my house and took my guns. He went and got his tow truck, and he hauled away all the vehicles that he knew that I liked, and he just stored them all. And I was like, "Why didn't you say anything?" And he's like, "You had a mission to worry about. You didn't worry about me. You didn't worry about your ex-wife. Like, I got this." And I was like, okay. So I do have people, and I feel like that was probably a good turnaround for me to look for things to live for. And after that, life mellowed out a little bit. I met my current wife, Summer. We've been together for 21 years, almost 22 years. And we were married almost 90 days, and I went to Iraq. And so my dad is like, "Hey, James, I love you, but if she wants a divorce, I'll pay for it, because, why would you want to do that?"
I'm a nice person, but this is one of your dumb ideas.
Yeah.
I was going to use the word highlight. I don't know if highlight's the right word, but I want to, just for the listener's perspective, James, the time frame from when you lost, you started this wrecking of your life here, losing your brother, losing your what within how many months of and all culminating into you finding out that you're going to, where'd you say, Wisconsin?
Washington. Yeah.
Sorry, when you're going to Washington, that time frame. What was that?
90 days.
So within 90 days is just shovel of shit piled on shovel of shit piled on shovel of shit in your life. And I really want to draw down on something. I think that I feel like I sense in this is that the worthiness of your cause outweighed all of it until it didn't.
Yep.
And when you found out you were going to Washington, the worthiness, your mission just became a absolute shit show because
I can do hard things for as long as I need to if there's a cause or if it's worthy.
That's right. And I feel like there's a lot of depth to that, and Ben, I'd love to hear your perspective on this. But so many times we hear people talking about they just lose sight of the cause, and for whatever reason, a multitude of reasons. For you, it was this. You're going to war, man. You're going to be you're going to be on the tip of the spear of serving your country in honor and valor in the noblest of ways. Nope, you're going to train a college student. And that had to have been enormously deflating of just trying to eat a shit sandwich there. And I feel like we hear that a lot in a variety of ways of people losing their cause, their worthiness of their mission, or maybe it was misaligned with what they actually saw. Am I onto something here, Ben, or no?
No, I think it's a great point. I think it's, as you mentioned that, I think about obviously different conversations I've had with different responders over the years. Part of this search for worthiness and purpose and all that kind of stuff, I hear a lot more of, I didn't find it at work, so maybe it'll happen in overtime. And I'm going to get more involved, and I'm going to be on different teams, and I'm going to get into higher risk, higher messy sort of situations, because somewhere around the corner, someone's going to tell me something to fill this void of the shit I don't want to feel and I don't want to deal with. And so I think, if anything, Brad, I hear these stories of folks who are incredibly committed to someone out there, whether it's this hot mess of a girlfriend or an affair or whatever. I just got to keep on looking. And ironically, if I make a bigger mess, I'm probably going to get some kind of attention, hopefully positive.
I see it in our retirement suicides.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They've lived a life of service to a cause that they've devoted their entire being to, and when it no longer exists, I mean, our suicide rate in our retirees is astronomical. I mean, nobody even knows. It's nobody has any. There's not a method by which they're tracking any of that. They barely even track the active suicides. But then, this is, thanks for sharing that. And then thanks for letting me back up there a little bit. So okay, we're to second deployment, James, married 90 days, on to the next deployment, kick back in for us.
Yeah. So I'm getting ready to leave. We got our orders, and my wife says, "Hey, guess what?" I'm like, "What?" She's like, "I'm pregnant." Right? Deployment, my orders are 18 months. And so we leave, no pomp and circumstance, like nobody wanted anything. We're not trusted the system. We fell for this once, right? 2 years ago. But this time we left. And we did a quick train up in Camp Williams in northern Utah to validate with the state that, the state got their money out of us. And we went and validated for active duty Army to make sure we could shoot, move, and communicate. And next thing I know, I was in what Times Magazine deemed the most dangerous city in the world, which was Ramadi, Iraq. It was a dead center of the Sunni Triangle. And that was hard. That was really, really hard because there were a lot of people that didn't want us there. And it was so much death and destruction all the time, to the point where somebody would get seriously injured or die, and they would call what was called River City. They would shut down all communication, no phones, no internet, no email. And back then, we had like Skype and dial-up internet, so it wasn't great. But I would go days, sometimes a week, without being able to talk to my family because they wouldn't lift River City until the families had been notified, but then somebody else would die. And then somebody else would die. And it was just like this ongoing thing. And the missions were good there, though. We had, 3 different missions that my unit did, 4 months, 4 months, 4 months, with the 6 months in the front for train up. And, my headspace wasn't great, but I had a really, really supportive wife who did what she could with my insecurities and my anxious attachment. My mom that, wrote everybody in my unit that would let her write. She was that super involved mom. But I had a lot. I had a lot going on. I wasn't talking to my oldest child from my first marriage, and that was a lot in my head. and I was a young E6. So I was a staff sergeant at the time. I had my own section. I was still using the person first kind of mentality, but we're in combat and I'm a new leader. And so I had my own struggles and some ego checks and stuff. But I knew there was an end date. I knew that, I'm according to my orders, this is the latest that they could have me home. And so I really kind of leaned on that to get me home. Anytime we'd have a mortar or a rocket attack, or we have, a suicide bomber, one gate or the other, it was just like, if I can just get through today, then I'll try and get through tomorrow. And that's kind of how I lived in that deployment. In that 18 months, it went by, and I came home and I met the most gorgeous 9-month-old daughter that hadn't met before, and a lot of fears surrounding that. She's going to call grandpa dad, and I'm going to be like this random guy, but you know what? It works out. But I came home from that, had some definite symptoms related to PTSD. It wasn't great for my relationships. I burned some of my relationships when I came home. I tried to destroy my marriage because that's what you do, but I had a wife that was like, you're going to fix it. You're going to get your shit fixed because I'm not going anywhere. And that has kind of been her mentality of, I'm not going anywhere. So keep pushing, I'm not going. And so I think like she's definitely been my rock and helped me through my military career, and helped me get through that. That was 2005, 2006. Helped me get through those years, and then on to my next deployment after that.
Can I ask real quick about what? Because I think this is a blind spot that often men or just people in general have. What we don't know that we're in self-destruct mode. Obviously, most of us can't see past our own nose. What were those things that made sense in the moment, but on the outside, people are like, what the hell's going on with James?
Say outlandish things. I would say things that were so far inappropriate for any setting that I was in that people just didn't want to hang around me. I was scream and yell, super quick hinged, like, what the F are you looking at? I'm swearing at people, and I'm picking fights with people that care about me. I'm cutting people off out of my life. I'm assuming that they feel a certain way about me. So I'm burning those bridges. I lacked some situational awareness about my wife's needs, about other people's needs. And I was kind of like very selfish, just looking inward at what I need now. And I'm not paying attention to how that impacts other relationships in my life.
And why do you think that was? I think now you might have some insight to it, but I think there's moments where we're doing this. We've definitely constructed the story. What was the story of why you just couldn't see him?
I think I was so concerned that I was going to end up alone and that nobody wanted anything to do with me, that I was self-fulfilling that. I was fulfilling that prophecy in trying to protect myself from loss and grief. I was creating loss and grief.
And your wife, I imagine you guys may have had a conversation or two about that since then.
Yeah.
I can't figure out for the life of me what she saw in you at that time.
I can't either. And I ask her all the time, and she's like last week, we talk about this a lot. Last week, she's like, it's because my mom didn't like you. Like, it was great. Like, I was at a point in my life where if my mom didn't like it, I loved it. And you were the perfect fit. I'm like, whatever.
Nice. That's great.
So let's I definitely want to save some time to speak to your passion today, but let's keep moving through some of your career. Now we're definitely, we got some fucked up things going on in James's world, right? And so let's keep moving forward. Now what?
So I get home from that deployment. I'm working for the state of Arizona doing commercial vehicle enforcement. I'm just not in it, right? I went from the SUNY Triangle to the St. George Port of Entry, where truck drivers, glare at you all day, and it just wasn't in it. And I got asked, because like I say, my artillery section was amazing. Like, on all expectations, they made me look so good. And so I had the artillery schoolhouse from northern Utah reach out to me, and they said, hey, we need somebody to come and run this artillery fire for 4 days, and we were told that you're the only one that we should call. I'm like, I'm on it, right? So I drove up there for 4 days. We shot artillery. I mean, we were hitting it hard and we were hitting it fast. My experience was there, my relationships with my team were there. And it ended on a Sunday, and on Saturday, somebody came in and they're like, hey, do you have a clean uniform? And I'm like, I've been in the field for 3 days, bro. Like, I know I smell. And they're like, no. You have a job interview tomorrow. And I said, what are you talking about? And they said, yeah, you're going to go do a board for an instructor position. Didn't anybody tell you? I'm like, nope. I'm like, I guess I'll be there. So I went And I went to this interview and I got an instructor job teaching a leadership course full time. And that's where I got my foot in the door to go active duty military and pursue that route. And that's kind of where my mental health journey really, like, of wanting to help people started, is being what we call on the podium in front of these soldiers teaching leadership skills. Because here I am, I'm teaching 12 hours of PowerPoint presentations again, but I get to put my own flavor into it. And so
Right.
I'm teaching these young soldiers about people first, and I'm teaching them about evaluating fairly and not cutting corners, and like I'm seeing the mental health that kind of comes along with that, because we get new soldiers every 21 days, new set of soldiers. But it was more than that. While I was teaching that course, there was a huge spike in suicides among Utah National Guard members at that time. And I want to say we averaged like 11, I think, in 24 months among people that I knew. And I was like, what is going on? Like, all these people are dying, and every month, every year, we sit on these suicide briefings and these resource briefings, and people are still killing themselves. And that's when I really looked at, why are they killing themselves? And I identified 3 things, and it's still true for me: finances, relationships, and substance use. And when any of life's problems have these 3 additions added to it, people tend to either complete or attempt suicide because it becomes unmanageable. Because if you don't have money, how are you going to take care of your family? If you don't have a family, what's the purpose of living? And if you are addicted to substances or abusing substances, your mind isn't in a state to be able to regulate those thoughts and emotions. And so then I was like, well, my oldest brother was shot and killed because of alcohol. My older brother died because of, pills and drug combinations. Maybe there's something to this. And then I was like, well, I'm going to become an addiction counselor. And that's what started the psychology journey, is the idea that if I could help with substance abuse, maybe I could make a difference in soldier suicide. And then it just kind of ballooned from there, where I was like, in working with substance abuse, it's much more than substance abuse, right? It's mental health. And so that's when I expanded from just a substance abuse therapist to a clinical mental health counseling route, is what got me spiraled on that.
Was this out of conversations you were having with other people that you discovered this, or was it something you read, or was it just personal observation of diving into some of these, the core of these suicides?
All the above.
Yeah.
In different positions that I've been in the military.
Yeah.
I was in a position where, before I retired, where I dealt directly with death, all of the death of service members whose first or next of kin lived in Utah. And so I was privy to some of those investigations and the documentation, and my theory rang true in almost all of them.
Is that shared in any capacity? Like the culmination of that? I mean,
I'd have to look and see. I haven't the last time I really dug into it was probably like 2022 when I stepped away from it. But even nowadays, when I see that a service member has died and I start asking around, it's usually one of the 3 that was like the catalyst.
I remember having a conversation with a general here, a Oklahoma National Guard general, here, I don't know, many years ago. And it was a very similar conversation. I was trying to recollect the entirety of it, but it's been, I'm old. So the points were very similar. But even then it was more of an aggregate of, totality of looking at it, but nothing really, nobody just saying boom, 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 bullet point, check, check, check. There was some movement towards how are we going to intervene and do some preventative things. I was involved in some of that, but that was powerful. And to hear it again, that's what resonated with me. I mean, it was almost verbatim. It just clicked in. Like, I've heard this conversation before of, something very similar. And we need to be having those conversations about, here it is, because it makes sense, right? Financial, family. I mean, you're just check that box, hope, worthless. Here it goes. And you've teed up something really awful, really dangerous for yourself. Yeah, for sure. Well, that's awesome. So now we have this like bright light moment of Lotus counseling services. Tell us, let's do some kind of diving in of what you get to see now, like what you get to experience and help with now, and some of the experience and wisdom that you've gleaned you've been doing this a while now. And
yeah, Ben was actually like my first like big kid like therapy position back in 2016, 17. And I worked for him, on and off for a couple of years and worked for somebody else. And then I opened my own. And what I get to experience is I get to experience a lot of loss, just sitting with individuals, couples, and families while they process that loss in a space where I'm not going to tell you that it's going to be okay. I'm not going to tell you that it's going to get any better. I'm just going to be there with you, and I'm going to let you have all of it. And then on the other end of that, I get to see the testing of the waters of what life looks like after a career, what life looks like after a relationship. And I do get to see that glowing light get brighter and brighter, as they move on their way. And the one thing that I find interesting, because I do have a large first responder, frontline worker, service member, veteran population, we have our veterans and our service members who experience these really condensed, 6 to 18 months of really hard combat traumatic experiences. And they get to carry that, and that's theirs to carry. And at some point, hopefully they get the help that they need, and we get to unravel that, and we get to work with that. And that is their trauma. And then we have our frontline workers and our first responders. They get to experience that every day. That's that 5-year-old that was killed in that traffic accident. That was that pregnant lady that was shot in a domestic violence situation. But then they got to go back to work, right? They're going to get off shift today after seeing that 5-year-old, and then they're going to go to work tomorrow, and they're going to carry that. And then they're going to carry the next thing. And so having the education that I have and having some of the trauma modalities that my team carries, I get to bring those veterans in. I get to bring those first responders in, and we get to work through that. Because I can't tell you you're not going to see another 5-year-old, but I can help you from carrying that 5-year-old into the next 5-year-old and helping them find a balance of that stress so that when they get off shift, they know it's been a hard shift, but they have an appointment with me. So they can go home and they can be a dad or a mom. They can go golfing with their friends. But Tuesday when they come in, it's on. We are going to work our asses off to help process this and work through it. That is what's so amazing about helping that population. And on the opposite side of that, having their kids, if you guys ever have the opportunity to work with a first responder or veterans kids and get their point of view, wow, right? My mom, she yells a lot. My dad, we don't talk to him the first hour that he's home because he's cranky, and being able to work with the kids and help them process. Because what I've learned along the way, and now that my kids are teenagers and adults, my kids went through hell because of me, right? Not that I was a bad human, but because of my trauma. So having that understanding and working with these individuals and these families, helping them get the very best quality of life that we can give them while still allowing them to do what they love, which is sacrifice.
I got a quick question about that, James, because you hit on it a little bit, and I'm hoping we can go back just a tiny bit and talk about it. Because as you mentioned earlier to Brad's question, this kind of pain, death, destruction, it's always real, but a lot of times it's not real to us. Mm-hmm. And it usually requires something. Maybe it's a statistic, but oftentimes it's a story where this epidemic becomes my epidemic, or it becomes personal, and in so doing becomes valuable. What are the other little tidbits that kids often don't know how to say and don't know what to do with when mom and dad are just in survival mode, just trying to slug through all this stuff? Because most of us are not given the tools to figure out how to grieve or do any of the stuff you're talking about. It's all bad news. What are those little messages from the younger folks that often get missed, or that you hear a lot about that might bring that to life a little bit?
Kids don't want to bring any more stress to their parents. So there might be a bully at school. They might be struggling with math. They're not going to say anything. They don't want to add additional stress, because if they provide a need to the parent, then they feel like they're adding to that behavior that they're exhibiting with their parents. And so it's a lot of really working with all of them. But when I'm working with these littles, teaching them how to use the voice and recognizing that I have this need, I have this want, I have this goal. It's important. And mom and dad, they don't know that if I don't communicate it. And even though mom and dad had a bad day, actually helping me with my math homework, it makes the day a little bit better because it's not work. It's not their work. And helping parents recognize that there almost needs to be a ritual that you allow yourself to do when you come from these really big, stressful jobs. For instance, on really hard days, I drive home with my windows down listening to 90s rap music at full blast. And I just imagine all of the day going out the windows. And when I come home and all my family comes rushing to me, I say, I love you all. Let me take a quick shower. And then I wash off the day and I put on a different set of clothes so that the day is no longer there. And then I'm focused, right? And being able to get the parents to recognize your family needs you, but if you need a minute to decompress, if you need 30 minutes, make that part of your routine so your family knows when you come home, you do these things, and then your time is important. And just helping facilitate that kind of thing.
That's a great point.
I want to play a little game with you for a second,
Okay.
but related to this theme that we're talking about right here with kids, and I'll tee it up and give you a little bit of space there to think it through. But you're working with a population that can verbalize things to their parents, but don't, for the reason that you just presented, which is they don't want to create, I need to be quiet, otherwise dad's going to blow up. I need to be quiet, mom's going to yell at me. What are some of the messages that you hear kids needing to say to their parents? Like when you've been talking to these kids, I wish my mom knew this about me. I wish dad understood this about me. I would just if you've got 10 of them, just rattle them off and so for our listeners out here, it might be really good, fodder just to think about, as they're driving around, maybe listen to this podcast saying, man, I wonder if my kid is in this position, or I wonder if that's the message my kid is not telling me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I got a list of things for you.
Rattle them off. What would be some of those things that a kid, here's my message to you, mom, and they don't have to make sense. They just, what are some of those?
They're going to sound super, super simple, but they get missed. Do you know who my best friend is? Do you know what I had for lunch at school today? Did you know how I did on my math test? Did you know that Tommy said they didn't want to be friends with me anymore? Did you know that my shoes are too small? Those pants you bought me have a hole in them and kids at school make fun of me. I really want to play soccer, but I know that you don't have time to take me. There's this father-daughter dance, but I know you're too busy. This person says this at church and I don't feel comfortable going to church anymore. Things like that.
So if we take that messaging, how do you unpack that for a parent? What would be
very loving, supportive way,
right? What would be what would be the message to the parent about how do you make sure you hear these things? What's your message to parents then? Here's how to make sure you don't miss this messaging. Yeah.
The studies have shown that as little as 20 minutes a week, one-on-one time at your kids' level is enough to create a healthy and secure attachment.
Okay, say that again.
The studies have shown that as little as 20 minutes a week is enough to create and build a supportive and safe attachment with your kid. So when I ask you, when's the last time you spent time alone with your kid? And you tell me, I don't have time, I work 60 hours a week. Do you have 20 minutes? Right? Taking that 20 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you have, and getting down at your kid's level. I'm not talking about video games and taking them to the movies. Video games is fine. But at a level where you actually are talking, maybe we're playing Uno. Maybe my 16-year-old's helping me check the fluids on the car, something. And we just say, tell me about your day. And the day was fine. What was fine about it, right? It was okay. What was okay? What wasn't okay? And just talking to them. If I had a magic wand, me, myself, I would come home every day and I would spend 10 minutes with all of my kids and my spouse, just letting them tell me all about their day. I do it as much as I can. I'm not great at it. But when it happens, I feel a more honest connection with my kids. But if I come in and I'm grumpy and I just go to the shower and then I hang out in my room for the night, they're not going to talk to me.
Yeah. I mean, the message is pretty strong. Like, I don't have any room for you, which trickles down into, it may not be that big of a deal. I just think about when we are in a world of crisis, and if it's not on fire, it's probably fine.
Right.
How easy is that autopilot to just go on for months and years? And like, hey, and we talked about this recently with a guest, I'm showing up, I'm providing you food, they may not fit, but I didn't have them when I was your age. I mean, there's all these things that we don't realize are sending the message of, I can't hear you, you don't matter.
Right.
Never is that our intention, but I think the willingness to consider, I just may not know what it's like to be on the other side of me.
Yeah. And the one message that I have for my families and for your families is every emotion matters for our kids. Your kid comes to you and they said, Tommy doesn't want to be my friend anymore. The world's over, right? Our first answer is, it'll be fine. You're going to make so many friends, right? You're moving into high school. That's what happens. Tommy is at the end of the world, and that is Tommy's, or whatever the child's reality is, right? That is their reality, that their world is over. Honor that, right? Honor that emotion and let them be with it. Teach your kids how to sit in that emotion and don't solve it for them. You know, your friend doesn't want to be friends with you anymore. That sounds absolutely horrible. Tell me more about that, right? Why does it bother you so much that they don't want to be your friend? And then maybe we kind of turn into a growth mindset of, what are your options? Tommy doesn't want to be your friend anymore, and that is so hard. What are your options? Well, Julie said they want to sit with me at lunch. Julie wants to sit with you at lunch, right? And allow for that growth mindset instead of, that's what happens. Your friend's an idiot. Move on. But every emotion matters because it's your kid's reality.
That is so incredibly powerful. I'm still dwelling on this 20 minutes a week of how little that actually is through the course of a week. And to your point, in the messaging that we send about how many other things are more important.
Yeah.
You know, so it's such a, you know, obviously, and you said it's not our intention, but, you know, the video games, the watching TV, the, you know, everything is more important than that 20 minutes when it's, wow, what a powerful point. What else you got, man? That just keep firing them off. So what else can we do? Right? 20 minutes, powerful
20 minutes a
message.
week.
Let them sit in their emotion. Don't fix it for them. What else you got?
I need you to date your spouse or your partner.
No.
Your kids need to know what it looks like for your spouse or your partner to be a priority so that when they're dating, they can make their relationships a priority. When you fight, your kids need to see what it looks like to reconcile and fix, not just adults slamming doors and going to the other room, right? Conflict happens, but so does resolution. And so, you know, if you and your partner are having a disagreement, let your kids see what resolution looks like too, because otherwise the first time they get in a fight with their boyfriend, girlfriend, they're slamming doors and that's the end of the relationship because they never saw the second half of the movie.
Right. Still open-ended. That's how it's supposed to end, right? Everybody's mad at each other, door slamming.
And those are relationships, right?
Sure.
Relationships are hard, but guess what? Your mom and I, we love each other, and she's going to be mad at me, and I'm going to be a jerk, but then it's going to be okay.
Let's talk about maybe a little more darker topic. If we maybe have some parents out there that have found that their kids are really not doing well from, you know, some of this shit that we brought home, or maybe their own, you know, shit they're experienced at school. But no doubt, you know, we're a big part of it. We bring, you know, vicarious trauma, you know, obviously even when we don't speak of it, we bring it. And, you know, if a parent is finding themselves, what are some things they should look for and maybe some red flags? I hate to use that term, but just be observant, and your child's, you know, what are some things? I don't want to put words in your mouth. What are some things that should be, like, a parent should be start, you know, paying attention?
If your kid is doing things differently, right? They were always on their phone, but now they won't pick up their phone. Let's have a conversation. If they used to wear all bright, colorful clothes and now they're only wearing black, let's have a conversation. If they used to be really good at grades, but now grades are slipping, let's not have a conversation about grades slipping. Let's talk about human. What's going on?
Yeah.
How can I help you? How can I support you? It's the differences you want to look for, right? Because adolescents, you have that underdeveloped brain and they want to isolate in their room and they use those absolute phrases of always, never, you know, I hate you, you ruined my life. That's only because they don't have the vocabulary developed in the brain to say, I had a really hard day at school today and this happened. It's I hate school, I never want to go again. And so with the absolutes, being able to say, can you give me an example of why your world is over? Can you help me understand a little bit more about why you think your teacher specifically only hates you? But when we see things that are out of the norm for that kid, because every kid's different, right? I don't want to put anybody in a box, but if my kid is acting differently than they used to, let's have that conversation. And that includes the opposite. If I have a kid that is normally quiet and kind of withdrawn, but now they're almost artificially open and like happy. Like you see this a lot where all of a sudden somebody is super happy. They're giving away or buying gifts for people and then they're dead, right? So just looking for those kinds of things. And when it comes to like schoolwork, this is going to sound kind of, I don't know, a little bit weird, but nowadays parents can look 24/7 and get an instant screenshot of what your kids' grades are. That's horrible. Right? Kids are constantly fearing, oh, my parents are going to look at my grades. I tell parents, look at your kid's grade once a week. And when you see 26 missing assignments, instead of saying, you got to get these assignments done, say, hey, let's go through your missing assignment list and just check the status to see what you need help on or what you've already turned in. Doing small things like that builds trust with our kids, that we trust them. And if we can trust them to talk to us about simple things like math homework, they can start to talk to us about more important things like sex, bullying, suicide ideation. I have parents that say, do not talk to my kids about suicide ideation because then they're going to want to commit suicide. Studies have already found that. That's debunked, right? If I'm willing to say, hey, this kid at your school, they ended their life. Did you know the kid? What do you know that they were going through? How, are you experiencing any of these similar things? If you start to feel this way, what are you willing to do? Who are you willing to call? You know, things like that, and just being honest with them.
I feel like you're describing you're joining them to tackle the problem together. The concept of it is, instead of meeting them abruptly, if not butting heads over, which is pretty bad messaging. You know, I'm guilty of both, probably more the latter of butting heads, but you know, I'm grateful today that I, you know, even just recently had a great relationship with my boys, but I feel you're describing something here about joining together to find a solution, and you being the parent and the adult with the wisdom and the experience can help them and teach them, which is if you're rushed and you don't have 20 minutes to give them, it's defeating it by just saying, figure your shit out and get your assignments in or else.
Yep. Yeah.
Now guess what your kid has to do anytime that they're missing an assignment or they're failing a class? They have to lie to you.
Sure. Well, you're teaching them something no matter what, right? You're always teaching them something.
The other, in terms of connection, sorry, I want to make sure I get this in there. In terms of connection, the other thing that I want to offer the two of you and your audience are 10-second hugs, right? Before you depart for the day, your spouse and those kids that are awake, they need a 10-second hug, right? This is science-backed as well, right? When you return home from the day, those people that are home are going to get a 10-second hug. Obviously, it's all about consent. If your kid doesn't want to give you a hug, there's no hug, right? Fist bump maybe. But if your family is willing to give you that 10-second hug, I want you to imagine an emotional fuel tank pulling up to an emotional gas station and being topped off at the first of the day and the last of the day. Wow. And having that emotional gas tank filled up at a minimum of twice a day. If you do this with your kids, it is a game changer, right? Like, I was driving my kids to and from, or to school for the last couple of years. It's been great. The first of the year, I started it with 10-second hugs when I got out of the car. I was like, Dad, my friends are looking, you know, knock it off. And there came a day where I got out of the car and my son's, he's 16, friends come rushing over. Bridger. And he goes, hold on. I gave my dad a hug, yo. And he comes and he gives me this big 10-second hug. I'm like, you didn't have to. And he goes, I want to. Deal, right? 10-second hugs.
No, I like the way you set those two things up, because I think we forget about the investment part of relationships. And I think we're, you know, I was raised by a dad who would drive all the way across town to make sure we got gas for 4 cents less a gallon. Mm-hmm. We go through great lengths at times to try and figure out how to save money or get a deal or get a discount. And I think emotional investments and those kinds of things, we sometimes struggle with the math of what we're really getting out of those kinds of investments. Because I see and talk with families and they don't think investment, they don't think long-term, they don't think about this bigger picture of refueling and helping this kid make it a little bit further. They've forgotten about what the younger version of survival mode looks like. And the part that's tough is that on the days when we don't get into that investment thinking, the days when a kid's got a complaint or they're irritable or they're grouchy, it's too easy for us to just walk away thinking this is an ungrateful, selfish kid. And we miss the mark completely. Anyway, I just love that there's little things we can do. Part of it is just shutting up and listening and just being positively persistent and just asking, you know, annoyingly being relevant and that they are relevant to us. I think those messages get missed a lot. And so what I see with folks who I work with who are, the wheels have come off, their kids aren't talking to them, they've got all sorts of tension and problems. And what they end up doing is they try to solve years of problems in a 10, 15-minute sit down. and they end up making accusations and a lot of defensive judgments or rationalizations, and they think they're solving stuff. They think they're knocking it down. And the reality is that they just are missing that larger picture. And so anyway, I just love your point of how do we invest where we're likely not only to make better use of bad days, but also we might even be preventing quite a bit of the struggle that, most of us work really hard to make sure we're minimizing suffering. Ironically, we'll dedicate 12, 16-hour days to making sure that no one has to deal with the injustice of what happens. But there's moments like that where, our kids are asking for it in lots of dysfunctional, quirky, little immature ways. But that's a cool way to show up. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah,
and I think
that. Go ahead.
On the heels of that, Ben, I just want to offer up that our children are seeing us go serve in this capacity for other people, that we're rescuing and helping and serving and sometimes even healing, offering compassion and probably many things that they're screaming out for. We're giving other people, and they're seeing it. They're hearing it. They're feeling or not feeling it. And then to have a cold shoulder or a silent voice when we get home, I think is compounded. It really hits home. I hope it hits home to our listeners. And James, before your comment, something you said resonated with me. It was Colonel Grossman that said, correct me if I'm wrong here, pain shared is pain divided, joy shared is joy multiplied. Yep. And that's exponentially multiplied. He goes on to talk about how, that hug, that's what resonated. As soon as you said it, it immediately came to mind. That I've never forgotten that first time I heard it. As we kind of wrap up here, James, what an absolute fantastic conversation. Thank you. And if you don't mind, I'm going to invite you back. I think we should have you back on. This is I think we should spend some time on these, but if I wrote down my notes correctly, 20 minutes a week with your kiddos, 20 minutes a week. One-on-one time. Get down on their level, right? Every emotion matters. Make sure you spend time. Every emotion matters. Date your spouse. Make sure you're dating your spouse. Make sure you fight and resolve in front of your children. And then 10-second hugs. Did I miss one of those?
You did perfect.
Well, I'm going to give the floor to you. Wrapping all that up, that's powerful, man. That is just such great information for not just the parental relationship, but the spousal significant other relationship as well. So we're going to wrap this up. A couple things. Give us the wrap up, and if you want to be contacted, if somebody's interested in connecting with you, tell us how to get a hold of you, but give us the final thoughts on all that you just offered.
So my final thought is just remember, when we observe an unwanted behavior with our kids, it's likely a need. So if we're able to look at the human aspect and look past the behavior and identify the need, then we no longer have to worry about the behavior because it's fixed.
Wow.
To get a hold of me or to schedule an appointment with myself or my staff, you can go to www.lotuscounselingutah.com.
Man, that is awesome. Well, you're fixing to Lotus your way off the podcast, man. We are super grateful to have you on. And again, I'd love to have you back because I think this needs to be a continuous and ongoing conversation if you're okay with it, because this has been, this has been so easy just to throw it out there and have some conversations. Maybe we should deep dive some more kid stuff and maybe some marriage stuff next time. Anything,
Absolutely.
Ben?
No, real quick, just want to say thanks, James. Obviously, I've known you for a minute, but I really appreciated hearing details of your story that I've never heard. And I think that's a great message and a piece of role modeling that sometimes we forget. It's powerful when we get to hear stories of someone that creates purpose out of suffering. And on our slow, discouraged, knockdown days, most of us aren't so sure if we can piece all that together and not, Anyway, I just have really appreciated you sharing with us, joining us a little bit, being a professional as always. But I'm just glad that more folks get to hear a little bit about your story. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, I'm grateful to be invited, and I'm so excited to see both of you again. So anytime you want me, I'm back. I'm here.
Right on. Thanks, James. We'll talk soon.
Absolutely.
Thanks everybody for listening. We'll catch you next time.
Chateau Health and Wellness is a 16-bed treatment facility nestled in the foothills of the Wasatch Mountains in Midway, Utah. Chateau's first responder resiliency program is designed to treat the unique challenges and issues that first responders encounter in the course of their careers. Chateau's comprehensive and highly individualized approach to treatment addresses more than just the presenting issues. It addresses the why. Each of their seasoned, trauma-trained, and culturally competent therapists utilize evidence-based, specialized therapies to treat trauma at its core and enable clients to begin the healing process while developing a resilient and healthy relationship with stress. Chateau Health and Wellness is trusted by departments and agencies from around the country to treat responders and veterans. In fact, it is one of only a handful of facilities nationwide that is vetted and approved to treat members of the Fraternal Order of Police. For more information or to speak to a representative, go to chateaurecovery.com or call 888-507-5031.